Today on Community Connections, I have the Booth family publishing empire, Mike and Patty, talking about the Link and the Coaster. So, I welcome both of you here.
Thank you.
Both publishers of weekly but not competing newspapers, Asbury Park and Long Branch.
That's correct.
You started in what is now the family business, kind of, Mike, with the old Atlanticville?
Yes, back in May of '76.
So 41 years the paper lasted, but you owned it until 2001.
Right.
And for those who don't know in town, most of us haven't seen it in a long time, but it is no longer in existence.
No, it just went out. I think for a couple of weeks I was the only one in town who realized it. I was running around thinking, I don't know if they're going to publish any longer, and they didn't. So it's been a couple, 3 weeks.
Was there any kind of an announcement, or it just stopped coming out?
I don't think there was any announcement at all. No one I talked to, I've told some people, they didn't know, and I said, well, you sell it here, and they go, well, I don't know, we don't really sell it. We were giving it away, and we just haven't seen it, and didn't really think much about it, and that was it.
Now,
Actually, I'm sorry, I actually called up their production company, their production.
Pat called.
and they
Yes.
said, we're done?
We're done.
We're
done
done.
with Long Branch.
Yeah, we were not printing in Long Branch. We're not sending it out to Long Branch. We're not sending it out to the Oceanport area.
Do they still have their other, I mean, when Greater Media bought the old Atlanticville, I'll always refer to it as the old Atlanticville, they started up, they had the Hub, they had a couple of newspapers going on for a while. Are those still in existence?
Yes, the Hub is still in existence, and Greater Media recently sold what was the Atlanticville and the Hub and what have you. So, I mean, they're weekly newspapers, and Warren Buffett says that weekly newspapers are in the future, and people have asked me about that. How come they're going out? If you're a weekly newspaper, you have to give people a reason to pick them up. If they're not going to read it, it doesn't make any difference if you're a weekly or a monthly or every 20 minutes. If people don't want to read it.
You still see a niche, though, for, I mean, I look at the Link, the Coaster, because it's not Long Branch, not so much, but there's still a niche for the weekly paper.
Yeah, because you can't Google what we put in the paper. You can't Google and find out that Grandma had a birthday or Grandma's 100.
Or see the picture or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot in there that we put online as publications.
Mm-hmm.
They go online, and you can Google that if we put it online. But if, there's nothing in there about Trump unless we feel like doing a
Unless it's a question of the week.
Yeah, question of the week or,
well, that's probably
for example.
a good thing. I mean, in the Times yesterday, Paul Krugman's column, 270 print media jobs have just disappeared in the last, I think, less
270,000.
270,000, I'm sorry. Something like a third or half of the jobs are gone.
Right.
And it doesn't seem likely that they're going to be coming back.
The bigger they are, the harder they fall in this business. I mean, here we are in Jules Plangier's building that he donated the money for, and from the Asbury. I think when the Asbury Park Press with the internet, big paper, big problems.
Well, he sold 97, 98, so about 20 years ago.
Right.
And very much the peak of the market. Not everybody had, in 1997, 98, not everybody had the internet in their house, and it wasn't the same thing.
No.
Nobody had Google, nobody had Facebook.
No, that's true.
I mean, if you want people in Long Branch to know what's going on, Facebook. It's certainly one of the ways people do disseminate information without the buffer of a reporter or an editor or, God forbid, a fact checker.
Well, the internet has made a big difference.
Not always for the best.
No.
There's
270,000 people that'll agree with you there.
Yeah. But, everybody still reads. It's just that now you don't need to be a writer or a reporter to put something out there.
Right.
That's made a difference.
Right.
How do you guys compete? How do you, I mean, you've been in business, Patty. He sold the paper. You took the remnants of it and started the Link a couple months later.
I went in to the same office that he vacated. We had these antique computers, and I called up a couple of people and said, do you want to come back to work? That was Martha Newhouse and Neil Schulman, basically, and Milt Bernstein, who has since passed away, but he was our proofreader.
And Martha and Neil are still with you.
Yep, they're still there, and they came aboard, and we just started all over again. You know, had to go sell it to people who were advertising. They had gone into the New Atlanticville. It took them a couple of months, which was a buffer period before us, between us opening again, and they realized they weren't getting any response. And then we came along and they said, can you guarantee it to us? And I had meetings with so many people and tried to sell it.
You lucked into a sports columnist.
Yeah. An anonymous one for a while.
For a while. But fairly well read as an anonymous writer.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, I remember that because, I mean, I always will give the old Atlanticville and your brother Tom a huge amount of credit for my political career. He doesn't write under the boardwalk. My personal history might be substantially different. And that was a pretty unusual column for a...
Very unusual. And highly acclaimed, I might add.
Well, tell us how. I'm sure Tom's watching. We'll watch this show.
How was it highly? I'll tell you a quick story. We received, the first time we entered the awards for the New Jersey Press Association, we won 8 awards, and 4 first place awards and 4 whatever second and third. And I went to the awards ceremony in New Brunswick, and Tom wrote a story called Carrying the Package, I believe. It was about an AIDS.
I remember it.
Remember? And it won first place. And when I got to the event, you know, in New Brunswick at the hotel, there were a crowd of people around this article, and they were all reading it, and they were all newspaper people from Pennsylvania, from New York, from New Jersey, and they wanted to meet Tom. So I went in there and I said, well, I'll have to call, you know, I mean, I didn't know. And I ran to a phone and I called Tom, and he told me that he had to cut Mrs. Orsino's grass and he couldn't make it, which was our next door neighbor. I said, okay, but I mean, I guess that was the story about Tom, so.
Well, I remember when he started writing because I remember my wife, Pat, saying, you know, there's this column in the Atlanticville you might want to start reading because he's talking about condos and development and politics. And I started reading it, and a little bit after that, I got a phone call. He had gotten my name and said, I want to try to save this place called Jackson Woods. Would you be willing to help? I said, okay, why not? Sounds like fun. And that started things. That started mine.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. But who would have known that we'd be spending 25 years talking about redevelopment anyway?
Yeah.
You guys basically grew up in Long Branch.
Yep.
Yes.
You don't live here anymore, though. Sort
My
of.
heart is here.
Okay. Your business is here.
My business is here, too.
And your business is not here, but you never moved.
No, I never moved.
Church Street School? Both
Church
of you?
Street School.
The old Gregory School?
Yep.
K
Long
through
Branch?
6. K through 6.
Chattel? Or did you go, by then it was already
went
the
to
last?
Leonard Conroe.
Chattel for 1 year, and then back to Church Street, then to Church Street for me.
And then both of you graduated from Long Branch High School.
Yeah.
And Long Branch had a real history of newspapers.
The Daily Record went out in October of '75.
But it had been here for a long time.
Oh, for a long time. And you know, someone sent me an article that I was in a bus accident back in the '50s. And
You were driving a bus back then?
No. I always tell people I was on a bus that was going 50 miles an hour and didn't have a driver. And it's true.
Where was the driver?
The driver had, we were coming back from Trenton. We were on 537 coming from Freehold. And a car passed us on the left and went to make a right, and the bus driver went to go around it, and then it made a left, and the bus driver went like that and fell into the well and couldn't get out. So the bus was going 50 miles an hour, and it went into a ditch, hit a telephone pole. It was very exciting.
Nobody got hurt?
There was a pregnant teacher on board, which I didn't even know, and she was hurt. But other than that, Willie
Was it a
Snell,
school trip?
who now works at the, pardon?
A school trip?
It was a school trip.
Oh.
Willie Snell, who was on the other bus, but he works at the library now, he photocopied this story and sent it to me. And I think the most interesting thing about it was that the event took place at night, later in the evening. I think it was in November. And the driver of the vehicle was fined, had already been in court and fined $5. So I told Willie, I said, if that were today, the lawsuits would probably still be going. But in fact, I feel like suing now.
Blame it on the lawyers. Go ahead. Now, did you grab a few of your reporters or people from the old record?
No.
Where'd Barry Cam come from?
Barry was from the old record, and
there are people in town. I mean, Barry died in 93, 94, so there are a lot of people in town who
don't know.
Cam's Corner was a must-read in this town for a long time.
Yeah, he did a great job with that.
He got more names into an article, into a column, than anybody else. Mm-hmm. You had it made in this town if you get mentioned.
You've probably seen his photographs and didn't know they were his now. But
yes, that's true.
And if you read the old daily records, you'll see. I don't know if his names are on them, but I know he was taking the pictures back then.
For anybody interested, you can actually go read you can still go read the old daily record.
And another thing about the daily record, we used to play Little League at what is now the hotel at the old stadium,
mm-hmm.
but a complete box score of all the Little League games were in the next day's daily record.
But you can read the daily record at the Long Branch Public Library.
No, I know, but my
microfiche.
point is that can you imagine putting in a complete box score?
Listen, one of my gripes with the Asbury Park Press is I used to be able to, and maybe I was the only person who did, but I used to be able to follow tennis, track and field, and high school sports. I mean, I could tell you who played and what they did, particularly in track and field, but I'd want to see who had the fastest kid in the county. Did Long Branch have? They don't cover. They've just wiped that out completely.
Right.
The press used to have a. Now I see Neil, your reporter, at virtually every city council meeting. I haven't seen a reporter. I see a reporter from the press a couple times a year now. It's different. I could get away with almost anything, and nobody would know.
Neil's there.
But it's a different world.
Uh-huh.
It's what we started out talking about. How do you like being in Asbury after 20 years?
I like Asbury. I mean, 10 minutes after I got there, Bruce started singing in the streets, and.
Are you taking credit?
On your tower above Asbury?
Yeah. I mean, things started to happen literally months after I got there, and it had really reached a low point, I think, around 2000, and it's made tremendous strides. It's really it's amazing.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back for the second half of the show.
Okay, can't wait.
You'll be part of it.
Your seat cushion can be used to grant wishes.
Who said that? Hello?
Really can, you know.
You talking to me?
Sure am. Because the airline miles you earn and donate to Make-A-Wish can help send thousands of kids on their wish trips. So donate to Make-A-Wish today.
You really should, you know. You really should.
And give wishes wings, because wishes work wonders.
We're back with the second half of the show with Patty and Mike Booth, brother and sister team, both running newspapers. You started your paper career, your journalism career with the old Atlanticville.
I did.
What did they have you doing there?
Pagination, which at that time was cut and paste, not on a computer. It was physically, you had to roll wax on the pieces of paper that were printed out a story, and you had to cut it to fit around ads and photos. And the first time we got a computer and the page came out with the photos on it and everything done in one shot, I ran up to the person, Jennifer, and gave her a hug. Because I'm like, oh my God, this was the most wonderful thing ever.
No more glue.
No more glue. Wax.
When you started your paper, now the link, you came out, if I remember correctly, it was either the Thursday right after or a week after 9/11.
Yes. Yes.
And I do remember people in town were excited.
Yeah, I had people crying.
What, did you write something nasty?
No,
Just happy
Mrs.
to have the paper back.
Lapidus was so happy. She came up to me crying that there was another paper in
Well, you know,
town.
one of the things I always found interesting is when Greater Media bought the Atlanticville, it became this very homogenized paper, which if we're Long Branch, a lot of different things. Homogenized, we're not.
No,
And
they wouldn't accept it.
No, had no local flavor, color, diversity, nothing. It was just, it could have been written about Shrewsbury or Little Silver, and a lot of it actually was.
And Old Bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New Brunswick.
And by then, the press was already, and fair or unfair, people in Long Branch always thought the press had it out for Long Branch. You know, whether...
And people in Asbury thought they had it out for Asbury, which I don't think they had it out for either.
Probably not. I mean,
I think
it's the nature of a
Yeah.
newspaper.
Yeah.
But certainly people got excited when the link came back. It looked and felt like the
It's a
old
loyalty
Atlantic.
thing,
Yeah.
like family.
Did you ever envision that you were going to be like in this business most of your life?
Not before this decision was made, but I've done a few things, and I have been successful at them.
Right. Karate,
Karate, yes.
the school.
Yep. And
You ever
It's
wonder why
interesting.
they didn't include you in the non-competition clause? I mean, I always kind
they
of...
wondered.
I'm
after.
sure they did.
Remember, we would,
She applied for a job there.
right. Well, I didn't apply. They interviewed everyone that had worked at the old Atlanticville at
Which
that
would have
time.
included you and Neil
Included
and Martha.
me, but because I was his sister, they wanted nothing to do with me.
So
And I
you
offered
showed
to,
them.
I offered to work there and help them make the transition because I started the Atlanticville and I wanted to see it survive.
Right.
And all they asked me to do was leave.
Did you have a favorite headline or cover story? You had some pretty colorful ones. I have several up on my wall in the office.
Yeah. Some of them, well,
Some of them you don't want to mention?
no.
Including some of the ones I have up on my...
Yeah, even those. I think we should just leave those out of this.
But I mean, I don't know if people realize, particularly early on in my career, Wednesday night, late, I knew where the paper was being delivered. And the same 3 or 4 people would be there waiting for the paper to be unloaded from whoever's station wagon was
Yeah,
driving them up.
and people used to wait at 7-Elevens, and the 7-Eleven on Jelline Avenue was one of the first places to get the paper, and there'd be people lined up to get it.
Do you inspire that kind of loyalty?
Not as
No.
much,
I
but we do.
I think that
They-
kind of loyalty went away with the box scores, and I mean it's still there. You still have to give people a reason to go and read it, you know. but,
Although there's a lot of people, we get phone calls, if they don't get their paper, they're very upset. We hand deliver them.
You're
So
now,
we do,
now- oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
if
cut
it's
you off.
local.
Right.
you
yeah,
know.
it's local enough.
Now, one of the things that, I mentioned under the boardwalk, which was Tom, but maybe even a bigger impact on the old Atlanticville was Chatter by Charlie.
Yes, Chatter by Charlie, my son Charlie.
How old was he when he started writing it?
10.
10?
Was he 10? I guess.
He's at least
yeah,
about 10.
10. And,
He wrote it through into his high school years. I don't,
No, he
No, he cut off before then?
Yeah. I guess he was around 9. He worked for a couple of years. But people liked Chatter by Charlie, that's for sure. I think the first time I realized it, I took him with me on a photo shoot to the Senior Citizens Center on 2nd Avenue. When we walked in, it was like I walked into the high school with Bruce Springsteen. I was like, all these old ladies were like, "Oh, it's Charlie," and I said, "Oh my God."
How much did you pay him per column? Did you?
Please don't bring that up.
Why will he? Will he
He's
get?
still looking for backpack.
Well, he's now teaching over in the school system. He's doing
Right.
well.
He's doing well.
He actually, one of the last times I talked to him is some of the teachers who remember him from when he was a student remembered and brought up in front of some. He used to write a column for the paper when he was a kid,
Yeah,
and it was.
right.
They still were talking about
You
it
remember
20 years
John
later.
Ward? He wrote a great column.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot.
One Man's
Sure.
Opinion. And he once told me, Charlie got 14 letters in a week once. John Ward said he didn't get 14 letters in a year.
Well, you know, when I wrote the sports column, it was always always a neat thing when somebody would come up and said, "I read what you wrote.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it." Or maybe it's the first thing I look at when I read the paper. And I used to write a little bit with, because Barry Cam, again, 20 years ago, everybody knew Barry.
Oh, yeah. And enjoyed what he wrote. He
Enjoyed what
He was a
but
character, and it came
There
out.
were columns. I go back and read some of my old ones where I said, "Oh, this was one of my Barry Cam columns," because how many names can I fit into,
Right, right.
2 pages of writing?
Right.
And I'd put and I would look and I said, "You got a lot of names. You didn't say a whole lot, but you got a lot of names." And in a newspaper, that matters.
Sure. People like to see their name in print.
So what do you think of the goings-on in Long Branch and Asbury Park these days? The towns are definitely different than they were when the papers started, but moving in the right direction?
Well, in 1960, I watched a program when I was 12 years old, and a man was on, and it was Channel 13, show much like this one, and he, was a sociologist, or he did studies, and the guy asked him, "What are things going to be like in the year 2000?" This is way back, 40 years before. And he said, I remember a few of the things he said: men would have long hair. There would be computers in the home would be as prevalent as televisions are today, which in the year 2000 was probably true.
Pretty close.
Because
Certainly
not
more
everyone
so-
had a TV back then, but
Right.
And then he said, the closer you get to the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, the more valuable your property is going to become. And it's going to become more and more valuable because people are going to want to be there. Mm-hmm. And I think, in 1960, you could have bought acres in Long Branch for peanuts. Things have certainly changed. And I think that is a driving force in Asbury and Long Branch, and people want to be here. And that's a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
So I always think of that when I look at what's happening in Asbury and Long Branch. People are excited to be. I go out and I do the question, or I still do a lot of. I always joke and say that I don't joke, but I started as a publisher and I worked my way down to the paper boy, because like today I delivered papers here. If they don't read it, But I ask people where they're from when I take the picture, and they're always from Woodbridge and Plainfield.
Well, Asbury is certainly a destination now.
Oh,
all
gosh.
over the country.
And when I come back with the photos, can't you get anyone local? I say, yeah, I ask. I went down the beach and I asked, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? I'm trying to take a local, and forget it. So.
Well, I can still find locals on Long Branch Beach.
Yeah.
You could have, we're shooting this in April. You could have this weekend when it was 85
This weekend was
degrees.
amazing. You couldn't
My
even
God.
get down Ocean Avenue. To make a left, there was a line.
That's a good thing.
Yep.
88 and a west wind.
Yeah.
It was
So
amazing.
if you're on the beach, it was
beautiful.
warm.
It was a beautiful day.
Huh?
I can't wait for summer. What's your favorite thing about what's going on in Long Branch these days? You've been here essentially your whole life. What do you think of it these days?
Well, it's kind of an oxymoron. I love that the buildings are coming down. but I hate that the buildings are coming down. You know, it's because I grew up with those buildings.
Sure.
But they're
Yeah.
such an eyesore now. They're decrepit and they're unsafe.
Right.
And as I go to my office in the morning, which is right by there.
Tell people exactly where your office is so they know how close you are.
I'm right by the old Sippersteins, which is a couple blocks up from the Ocean Place. And
On Broadway.
On Broadway, downtown.
We're almost at the foot of the big tower.
Yeah.
Yep. And as I go to work every once in a while, I take my phone out and I film. You know, I video what's going on down the street. Then I tweet it. This building came down. That building came down.
You
know?
have many followers?
Yeah.
How many is many?
I don't know. I'm not. Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm
She's
one
not
of those
follower
people.
savvy.
I'm not
Twitter,
follower
I
savvy.
just, it's not my thing.
Yeah.
I'm not a Facebook guy. I am starting to become one for political purposes. It's a great way to get information out quickly, but 140 characters.
You have to do it.
That's the problem.
The tweeting, you get used to it. You know, the picture itself takes up a few characters, and then you tweet around the photo or the video. The
Does
other
it help
day I
your
did the
business
video.
at all, or you don't really pay attention that closely?
I don't pay attention so much. Facebook and we're online, and we have ads, you know, paid ads going down the side. And Facebook, we get a lot of hits on Facebook. You know, we'll put a story up, it'll be like 10,000 in an hour.
Really?
Yeah. So we get shared, and so yeah, if it's a story that gets around.
You're
And-
still my primary advertising source.
So tell us what's happening downtown. Let's interview you a little bit.
Well, we, after many years of inactivity, some of them having to do with the current owners, about less than a year ago, one of the partners from Long Branch Partners, Nick Manoia, said, okay, we're not going to fight with you anymore. Let's make a deal. Let's move. And he's been very good at it.
When is Sipperstein's coming down? I mean, not Sipperstein's, but the Paramount.
Soon. That's a complicated building to take down. By the time people are watching this, it's probably gone. The other side of the street that they own is coming down. We'll be reviewing their plans. We've tentatively looked at them and said, good. We'll be getting, now they've got to spend a lot. They spent $1.5 million doing demolition. They're going to spend $100,000 or more doing the formal plans. Then we're going to approve them, make our financial deal.
And what's downtown going to look like?
About 100,000 square feet of retail and about 500 residential units and about 1,500 parking spaces. Attractively designed. So, and maybe a plaza right down the middle of Broadway, so that there's activity right in the middle of the street. And you guys can report on it when it happens. Well, thank you
yeah.
both very much for coming.
Okay.